thank you for joining us for our interview today. The GTA basketball is growing, and we're lucky to have the privilege to talk to you and film in one of many amazing playground facilities. So thank you on behalf of our group and to Toronto Metropolitan University.
For sure, for sure.
A big part of who you are today is due to being from Scarborough. Can you elaborate on what Scarborough means to you?
Scarborough means to me, it means everything. It's home. It's where I grew up. My family immigrated here in the 80s. So there was a huge immigrant population when we came here. And the Scarborough I grew up in was culturally diverse. It was, where we all came, we were outside a lot. Just the restaurants, the atmosphere, the environment, the culture. It's just, to me, it feels different. But to me, Scarborough is home. Scarborough is where I'm from. I recognize with being a Scarboroughan, even though it doesn't actually exist anymore. Now once they amalgamated the megacity, there is actually no Scarborough. But Scarborough is forever kind of like where I consider home. And it's the people. It really is the people.
I think that's amazing. I think definitely the culture has shaped who Scarboroughans are today. And the history behind it is truly fascinating. And I think you set an example for people in the new generation as well. Many people overlook a place like Scarborough and focus elsewhere. However, you saw something that others didn't. But what do you think makes Scarborough special compared to other cities in the GTA? How does it stand out the most, you would say?
That's a great question. See, sometimes, media or music or just social commentary, they report on the realities of society, right? And I feel like for a long time, Scarborough, it was incorrect. The image that was being beamed to the rest of the world or to the rest of the city was a place of violence, a place that wasn't safe, a place that, had a lot of, inner city problems. And no exaggeration, it's not true. It's not true. I think the reason why Scarborough's in a renaissance now is, there's been a shift. There's almost been like people are reverting back to Scarborough and realizing that, it is the one place in this city that has its own identity, that has its own culture, and for a lot of people, they thought they had to be successful, they had to kind of go either downtown or other parts of the city or other parts of the country. But the first thing I did when I started my company back in 2006 was I made a point of it to stay in Scarborough. And I wanted to set an example that you don't have to go somewhere else to be successful. You can be successful here. Our company is actually the largest corporation in Scarborough. It's the only billion-dollar organization in Scarborough, the only one, which isn't a good thing actually. That's a bad thing because compared to North York or downtown, they have dozens of billion-dollar companies. But it starts with someone having a vision. So if that's what I did, I can hang my hat on that. I'm proud of the fact that, I knew this city was a good business environment. When a lot of people would say, yeah, it's cool for culture, it's cool for food, it's good for music, it's good for stuff, but for business, I got to go somewhere else. But I'm trying to kind of pave a new road and saying that, Scarborough's open for business. Scarborough's a great place to do business. It's a great place to live, and it's a great place to do business. And that's really why I decided to stay here. And that's really why I decided to keep all of my operations in Scarborough.
Absolutely, I think that's amazing. I think your vision and mission as you grew up was, how do you bind this community together? And ultimately, you did it through sports and
yes.
basketball, and creating a company that, the mantra is peace, love, positivity, and equality, and for all ages. And I think what you did is truly amazing. You chose to stay and grow your business from within the core of the city instead of going to Toronto, as most people would. What was the mindset behind doing something like that, developing the business? What was the pre-production?
I used to, I still do sometimes, but there's a high school program, it's called DECA. And it was basically like Business Olympics or something like that. It was when they would students, it'd almost be like a makeshift Dragon's Den. And, students would kind of present ideas to, fake scenarios to professors or teachers. And I was one of the judges. And again, all of these kids are saying, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it somewhere else. I'm going to have to go to Vancouver. I'm going to have to go to Toronto. I'm going to go to other parts of America. And these are kids in Scarborough, Cedarbrae Collegiate, Thompson Collegiate, all of these schools in Scarborough that are these kids are brilliant, and they're as good or better than all of their counterparts, but they don't believe in the community. They don't believe that it's a strong community. So for me, it's like, if we can pull these kids, it's actually tapping into a resource that many people aren't seeing as available. So that was important to us, because a lot of these kids just felt like they had to leave. So if we set up a company, like a world-class operation in Scarborough, and said, look, you know what, this is a great place to work. Just like Google, just like, Facebook, and all these other companies. And that was the vision behind it. You know what, setting up a great place to work, building a strong culture, and I would say, 95% of our staff are from Scarborough.
I think that's amazing, and you contributed greatly to the growth of the game all across the GTA, especially in Scarborough, with your basketball facilities and developing the Playground Global. What was your vision when starting this organization, the Playground?
So the playground was solely based out of necessity when it came to my own children. I mean, it's a funny story, but I was just taking them from, they were in their programs, they were playing for, rep teams, and it was Brampton, then Mississauga. And then before you knew it, as they got older, there wasn't space available. There was, badminton or Tai Chi or volleyball would always get kind of priority over basketball. So when the first facility became available, it was a building that we managed, and one of our tenants moved out. I decided to build a basketball court, not knowing that it was going to become a brand, not knowing that I was going to take it to multiple locations. But this area, this part of our economy is so underserved. It's so underserved. There's so much demand, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, once we opened the first one and we saw the demand and we saw how many people were interested, basketball only, basketball first facilities, we started opening them across the province. Now we're 8 locations deep, and we just opened our first location in Houston, in Texas.
That's amazing, and just the journey of the pre-production all the way, the stardom on social media and the word spreading around and getting former NBA players. I think that's amazing, and it's only going to get bigger, absolutely. And being involved with the basketball movement in the GTA, you've seen the talent in the youth. Speak on how the GTA and Scarborough stack up to other basketball hubs in the world. So how do they differentiate, and how unique is the community of Scarborough when it comes to basketball, you can say?
Look, I think in terms of basketball in Scarborough at the youth level, I might argue it might be one of the top 5 in the world. Like, I'm not exaggerating. See, you got to remember, like, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, hockey was at its peak. And then you have this mass migration, primarily from Africa and from the Caribbean. And even from Arab countries, from Asian countries, those countries don't play hockey. They don't play hockey. Basketball was always kind of central. Scarborough being a place where a lot of immigrants kind of came first, like, basketball took off. Then the rise of the Raptors, Vince Carter effect, it all happened kind of around the same time. Right now, I wouldn't call Scarborough a mature basketball community. It's still growing, but I think within 5 years, this might be the most competitive market in the world. No exaggeration. Like, I'm already seeing kids come from the US to play here. So that's starting to happen, where Americans are coming to prep schools in Toronto, are coming to prep schools in Scarborough. That didn't happen before. That was unheard of before. But that's starting to happen. And now, like, even like something like Made Hoops, the Nike EYBL, they're hosting tournaments in Canada. That never happened before. There wasn't enough talent here to do that, right? So that's all started. And a lot of it's part of the facilities, a lot of it's part of the talent. But at the end of the day, those big brands, those companies, they're not going to do it if it doesn't make financial sense. So I'm telling you right now, within 5 years, this is probably the best place to be involved in basketball, like Toronto and Scarborough in particular.
Absolutely. As a follow-up question, would you say this would be, in the next 5 years, would be a nice gateway to play professional basketball in the U.S. or overseas?
Well, I think so for sure. Look, I used to, look, when I'm old enough, and you guys, everyone in this room is too young, right? But I'm old enough to remember Jamal McGlure. And he was kind of one of the first people that came out of Scarborough and made the NBA. And he was more of a rumor. So we heard about this guy, he was 6'10", he was 15 years old, he was 6'10". and he went to Wexford Collegiate, and you would go to the gym, and there he was, and he was blocking shots, and he was doing this thing. He ended up going to Kentucky and had a great career in the NBA. But when Jamal started, he was the only one. He was the only one, and he went to a normal high school. He went to just a regular normal high school, and he had to go to Kentucky. He had to leave Canada to become successful. There's so much competition now. Since then, and it's only been about 20 years. But in 20 years, the competition is so high here that some of the top prospects no longer have to leave. Like they no longer have to leave. Like if you look at Elijah Fisher, Elijah Fisher, he's probably a one and done player. He'll probably be in the NBA in 2 years. He didn't leave Canada. He finished his entire high school career in Canada. Right now, he actually goes to my school. His name is Vishawn Alette, Ifosa. These kids are all staying in Canada, and they're on every board. Every recruitment board, every draft board, they're number 1, number 2. ESPN ranks them right in the top 10. And they're not at Montverde, they're not at IMG in Florida. No, they're right here in Scarborough. And these are the best in the world. And they're not leaving. They're no longer leaving. There's no need to leave. Every day now, I'm walking through my offices, and I see the head coach of Alabama in here. I see the head coach of Arizona. I see the head coach of Duke. Krzyzewski was here before he retired, and he's flying to Scarborough to look at our players. We're no longer having to go there, and they're going to go where the talent is. The talent's here.
Absolutely, I think the talent speaks for itself. And the NBA draft, there's a lot more Canadians. I think there's a stat where it's the first time that 23 Canadians will play in the same day in the NBA.
Wow.
So not even that, but all across the world, in global Olympics as well. So.
Well, I think as of today's the opening day roster. I think there was 27 Canadians on opening day rosters made the team, and there's probably another 50 in the G League.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The talent speaks for itself, and it all goes back to the roots. And the high school basketball scene, the GTA, is experiencing the most opportunities it ever has lately in the present time. Being someone who was present when there was very little exposure, is the growth within the high school scene more about the rise of popularity of basketball, or now that the spotlight is finally on the GTA?
So the rise is undeniable. The talent level has grown so fast that, look, I'll tell you one issue. One issue is high school basketball is now lost, right? So you're not considered a player anymore if you're not playing prep. And that's unfortunate, actually, because now all the programs are prep programs. All the programs are basketball first programs. And a lot of the kids who are on the bubble, in grade 9 or grade 8, grade 9, can't get into a prep program. So you know what? It becomes limiting that way. But the prep scene in Toronto, there's probably 30 prep schools, compared to 10 years ago, there was 0. 5 years ago, just Orangeville. Orangeville was the only one. And when Orangeville did prep, it was so foreign. Like, kids are coming from all over Canada to sleep here in dormitories and play basketball. They produce 5 NBA players within 3 years, and then everyone says, wow, this model worked. But when Orangeville did that, it was craziness. It was crazy. Like, what parent would trust their kid to sleep in the middle of Northern Ontario? It was wild. But it ended up becoming so successful that there's been so many schools that have popped up. I think now it's actually getting a little too saturated. I think there's too much prep. There's too many prep. Like before, when there was 5 or 6 prep schools and they were the best of the best and they played each other regularly, and the expression iron sharpens iron, the kids would get better because they would play against the best. But now, because prep has been a bit watered down, there's too many lopsided games. You see 70 to 7. Like, you see these crazy scores, right? And you're like, no, this is a mistake. So again, it's kind of going through a renaissance where, Ontario basketball is going to have to step in and keep the elite at the elite. There's no point of an elite team playing against a team that they can beat them 70 to 10. So it's going to go through that change. But all of this stuff is a cycle. All of these things are a cycle, and it's a part of the growth process. But I would say the OSBA elite, the elite level of OSBA, the top 8 schools, are the top 5 league in North America. I would say they're a top 5 league in North America. And you could put the best OSBA team right now, Royal Crown, Orangeville, USA, and they can go play Montverde, they can play IMG, they can play the best schools in the States, and they'll beat them. They'll compete with them, but they'll most likely beat them. And the world notice. So I guess it's a long response to your question, but it is a bit watered down. you can't deny the fact that money is now, large amounts of money are now involved. And there's no denying motivation to shift when there's money involved. The average prep fee is probably $10,000. A lot of these families are, you would call them have some financial barriers. So it's incredible how people are affording these fees. I mean, we try our best to keep fees as low as possible. And at least in this school, Scarborough, it's almost primarily scholarships. So local business community offers scholarships to their kids. But overall, like a school like Orangeville charges $18,000. $18,000 is their fee. And that is very high. Basketball does not have the richest population that play that sport. It's not golf. It's not hockey. It's basketball. Basketball is primarily known for an inner city sport. It's dominated by Filipino, Black. That's the kids who play basketball, right? South Asian. And historically they're not the richest. So that's a piece of it that again, it needs to work out, because that financial piece is concerning to me. But I do believe we're at the cusp of what is probably going to be a dominance, Canadian dominance for the next 10 years when it comes to basketball.
Absolutely, and I think before this interview you mentioned to me how much the scenery of basketball within the GTA and all of Canada has changed, because back in the day, the tradition, it was more street ball, and people came up from street ball and there was no fees and there was no prep, and now a lot has changed.
Yeah.
Even in the U.S. and Canada, all across, people have followed the same trend.
Yeah.
So it seems like money is playing a big factor.
Money is huge. Look, now there's 12-year-olds that have sports doctors. 12-year-olds, no zero. Like now programs, like the large programs, like Scarborough Blues is a large program, and Brampton Warriors is a large program. They have doctors on staff. These are 12-year-olds with doctors. The training culture has developed. So a kid is expected to go to practice 2-3 times a week. We're talking maybe 10 years old. And then he's expected to also train privately, with one of these certified trainers, right? So training culture has gone up, practice level has gone up, and it's almost becoming a professionalization of youth basketball. These kids are almost becoming little professionals. And sometimes, what you hear about the ACL tear, the MCL tear, the Achilles tendon tear, and you're like, it's overplay, you're playing too much. But that's when parents need to, they need to pull it back a little bit, because I've seen it. I've seen things that, were like not very cool of what's happened with, because see, the problem is, and there's a number, but I don't know what the exact number is, but enough kids in Toronto have made it that it's no longer a pipe dream. It really isn't. And if you play on UPlay, which is a prep program, UPlay, Canada Elite, Northern Kings, or Grassroots. If you're on those 4 teams, those are what they call sneaker teams. So it's UPlay is Nike, Canada Elite is Under Armour, Grassroots is Adidas, and Northern Kings is Jordan. If you're on a sneaker team, you have 100% chance of getting a Division I scholarship. 100. So when those guys post those ridiculous stats saying, you got 1,000,000 to 1 chance of, being a D1 athlete, yeah, that's true for the masses. But if you can find a way on that sneaker team, every kid gets a scholarship offer. So now it's like, it's so tangible. So parents are pumping tons of money into youth basketball because they see it. If my kid's on an Under Armour team and he plays in the Under Armour circuit, he's gonna get a scholarship. It may not be a high major, it may not be a blue team, like a blue college like Kentucky, Duke, or Connecticut, but guess what? He can go to Howard, he can get a free education, and then he can come back and play pro in Europe. And you know what? People actually plan that. When I was a kid, that was a ridiculous thing to plan. Like, you got a better chance, go be an accountant. But now, you know what? When you talk to a kid, you're like, are you sure you're going to be in the NBA? And they'll tell you, well, my brother Shea, my uncle is Shea Gilchrist, Alexander. And he signed a $164 million contract. That's my uncle. It's not a pipe dream anymore. This is my friend. My friend's Nikhil Walker, or actually before we started, Emmanuel plays professional in Armenia, the guy who was just balling here. And he's a professional athlete, gets paid $200,000 a year, right? So all of a sudden you're like, you know what, this is not as out of reach as it used to be. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened in basketball. It happens enough. There's been enough success that parents really believe that if they push their kid hard enough, he could make it.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. I think that your mindset as you got older is you thought of playing basketball in the GTA and how it could evolve, and you broke that barrier by formulating the CEBL and giving the youth and high school basketball players and young athletes in the GTA opportunities to there's scouts there and playing for a team and just having fun and all about peace, love, positivity, equality. I think that's the most important thing. And not only have you established the state-of-the-art basketball facilities within communities all over Ontario, but you are the co-owner of the Scarborough Shooting Stars of the Canadian Elite Basketball League. What does a popularized Canadian basketball league such as the CEBL mean for high school athletes in the GTA and Canada?
Look, I think the CEBL is, honestly, it's almost the culmination of what's been going on in Canada for the last 15 years. It is arguably the most important thing that has happened in Canadian basketball. I'm talking even more important than the national team. The CEBL league, I'm a believer in the league, and I own a team in the league. I own it, and again, who do I own a team with? I own it with OVO. So Drake and Nico and Chubbs and all these guys, they don't associate themselves with losers. They only bet on winning horses. So they know it's a wild success. But what the CEBL gives, it allows now for these players that are G League players, that are high, European players, they play in China, it allows them to play at home, right? And allows them to play professionally in a league that is producing NBA players and is producing a lot of talent. Right now, the average salary in the league is, maybe $30,000 to $40,000, and that's only for 3 months. But that's in its first 4 years. Once there's a television deal, like once TSN or another sports channel picks it up, once a few more teams are added, that's going to make the salaries go up. Once the salaries go up, and now you're talking $80,000, $100,000, $120,000 to play for 3 months in the summer, now you're going to attract the best Canadian talent. The best Canadian talent's going to be playing right here in Canada. Again, stopping that, what they call like that talent drain. So just like in high school, we've made high school so good now that kids don't have to leave for high school. They no longer have to leave to be pros either. So someone like Emmanuel, who's just here, he doesn't have to go to Armenia. He can play for Saskatchewan and make just as much money and play in front of his family. The CEBL, I think, will eventually become 14 teams. Right now it's 10 teams, 14 to 16 teams. And I'm not exaggerating. I think it will be the best league outside of the NBA and the Euro League, the top Euro League in the world. In the world. Like, that's how much talent's coming out here. And also the CEBL is very smart because they mandate 70% of the players are Canadian. So if your roster is 15 people, 10, 11 have to be Canadian, 3 are American, and 1 international. So you only allow 3 Americans and 1 international. More so is on the court, during a game, only 2 Americans are allowed on the court at once. So you can't have 3 Americans on the court or you get a technical foul. So the league is built in, the rules are built in to support and to promote Canadian talent. And that's what's important. Like, we're talking about the best players. Look, we had a guy in our team, Cassius Robinson, who makes $500,000 in Barcelona. But he still came and played for the CEBL because he goes, this is a great opportunity. It gets me in front of Nick Nurse. It gets me in front of the Raptors. It gets me in front of the NBA. All these guys who got G League invites, they didn't get it because of Armenia. They got it because of CEBL. And the players know that. The players know that. So I think the CEBL is really, it's going to change basketball in this country. It gives kids no longer just a landing point in the NBA, but now, I can play pro for the CEBL. It's a great opportunity. And it just makes the sport stronger in this country. Like the CFL. I compare it to the CFL. The CFL is, the best place to play football in Canada. Canada should have a domestic league as well for basketball, right? There's no reason why we should have a domestic league. So the CEBL's kind of filled that void. And the entertainment value is great. The talent's great. It's fun. The price point's good. It's just good. It's just good all around. I think it's been very successful in its first 4 years.
Absolutely. And within the next 5 years, do you have any personal, achievements or aspirations that you want to push through and introduce in the future, CEBL to go more global, possibly?
Well, I mean, for us in Scarborough, we're building an arena in Scarborough, so it'll be the first CEBL built arena, and again, it's just to allow us control. I think for my own personal goals is, look, I would love to be an NBA owner. It was funny when the Phoenix Suns were made available. We put a bid. We put a bid on the Phoenix Suns, and I spoke to Robert. I don't know, you don't want to play this back in an interview, I think, but I spoke to Robert Sarver, and and he's like disgraced, right? Like he got booked for misogyny and racist comments and all that stuff, right? But when I spoke to him, he's like, yeah, you know what, the world's kind of unforgiving now. A guy like me can't survive in this world, which is whatever. But he wants $4 billion. So again, just to tell you how much basketball is reaching a level, the Phoenix Suns, which is a mid-level team, it's not the New York Knicks, it's not the Los Angeles Lakers, it's the Phoenix Suns. I would classify the Phoenix Suns kind of like the Raptors, like kind of a mid-level team. He's looking for $4 billion. That's comparable to Barcelona, like the soccer club. The Yankees are worth $8 billion. The most valuable franchise in the world is the New York Yankees, and they're worth $8 billion. But look how much basketball teams now are growing. Look at the value of growing. So when the Phoenix Suns go up, the whole basketball community comes up with it. So even our CEBL teams now are more valuable. So I would love to get in. I would love to get into NBA ownership. It's something I'd love to do. I mean, $4 billion is slightly unaffordable at this point, but that's one of my personal goals.
That's amazing. And I think speaking of value, the success of the Scarborough Shooting Stars in their inaugural season was tremendous, truly, and really rallied the entire city together. Forming a nation and a fan base, how big of an impact have you seen the Shooting Stars contribute to Scarborough?
You know what? That's been the most rewarding piece. I didn't know how the team was going to be received because, again, it was a vision to put the team in Scarborough. There was no market research. There was no data. Nothing told us that it's the right move to make. And the truth is, Toronto, Mississauga, it's probably a better market, for a professional team. But it was important to us to put the team in Scarborough because we believed in the city. So when the city came out and the city supported the team, even when we went to Ottawa for championship game, and there were 400 tickets bought from Scarborough, and they drove to Ottawa. 400 people left Scarborough to go to Ottawa to watch our championship game. And if you watch the game, at the end of the game, as we were kind of like making a march to win the game, the entire arena had converted to Scarborough. And the entire arena was cheering for Scarborough. They're like, let's go Scarborough. And that was in Ottawa. And I'm telling you, I get stopped in the mall, I get stopped in the middle, I get stopped in the street. Sometimes I'm walking with my kids and someone says, hey Sam, thanks for the team. That to me means everything. Because it's not just, it's bigger than myself, it's bigger than basketball. It's like, thanks for doing this for our city. Thanks for doing this for our kids, for our community. And I mean, I can't tell you a more fulfilling experience I've had in my life. Like when we signed J. Cole, and J. Cole was on the team, and the media broke, I had no idea what that was going to mean. I had no idea what it meant to have someone like J. Cole on the team. But it brought so much good attention, it brought so much good energy to the team, and it's something I'm very proud of, what came of it, and the way the community embraced the team. It was really cool.
Oh, it's going to continue to evolve at a rapid rate. I think with an expansion and more marketing, and the CBL is on its way to be a true conglomerate in the sports industry and basketball. And I'm curious to ask, has there been any players from the CBL that have gone to the NBA? Has there been any specific success stories that are your personal favorites, or you've identified and seen?
Yeah, well, seven players have gone from the CBL to the NBA. So Jalen Harris, who was on our team, signed with the New York Knicks. Xavier Moon went to the Los Angeles Clippers. There has been a lot of players that have gone to the CBL. And that's what makes it so important. That's what makes it so successful, because players can see that trajectory. They can see that dream is alive, and they can use the CBL as a vehicle. When you initially talk to players and you tell them to play in Canada for the summer, they're basically like, what's in it for me? But when you tell them, look, there's proof of concept here. Guys have went from our league into the NBA. That is what gets them excited. For every basketball player, the dream is the NBA. The league is the league. Anyone who's ever, put a ball in the net has dreamed of one day playing in the NBA. And for these players, that dream is alive and well in the CBL. If you do well in the CBL, you have a chance to play in the NBA. You have a chance to be invited to summer camp. You have a chance to get invited to summer league. And I think that's what everyone's looking for. The CBL offers an opportunity that didn't exist before. I think that's what's most important.
I think that's amazing, just the evolution of having a gateway for players to go to the NBA and go to the big leagues. And as you said before, playing for your hometown or playing for your own country in the GTA. And like you said, you want to create a community where players from Toronto, players from Scarborough or Brampton could play for their own teams. They don't have to go abroad. They have an easier gateway that they can have their family with them to support them.
Exactly.
And they have an amazing community behind them. I think that's amazing. And another important factor here, as the last question, where does your passion for the game come from?
My passion comes from my youth as a child. I played basketball. I played at high school basketball, Stephen Leacock, just actually down the road here, Birchmount and Huntingwood. And I loved basketball. But what I love basketball the most, what I really love about basketball is I really believe there's really no other sport that brings communities together. It brings ethnic groups together. It culturally unites people, and that's what I love about basketball. And I think is truly unique about basketball. For me, my love about basketball it comes from living in an urban community. It comes from hip hop. It comes from the schools I went to. It comes from the friends I've been. Basketball was a part of our life. It was a part of everything we did, and to me, I just love being involved still. I can't play on the court anymore, but you know what? I love being involved. So even when I get to go travel with the team and I get to, hop on a private jet with J. Cole to Ottawa, you know what? That's a cool experience, right? And you're like, you pinch yourself. You're like, what on earth did I do in my life to deserve this? Right? So it's awesome. It's amazing. Or like when LeBron came to Toronto and he did his charity event. And he invited all of us. He invited the whole team, LeBron James, and you're sitting there, and you're like, should I ask you for an autograph, or am I? Would that be kind of not cool? And of course, I did. I asked him for an autograph. but it is. It's amazing. It's amazing. Or even our guys, like our players, to have practice, to have team practice at Drake's house, for them to be like, you're practicing at 24. I don't want to say the guy's address, but you're going to practice there. For even for these kids, that's still their hero. That's their idol. Like J. Cole, some of the players on our team, J. Cole's their favorite rapper, and he's in the corner for waiting for a pass for a 3-point shot. That's what was so cool about that. That's what's cool for me, for basketball and for everything that we've done. It's just it opens doors. It opens doors, it gives opportunities, it unites people, all different ages. My dad's the biggest Shooting Stars fan. He's the biggest Raptors fan. He's 80 years old. And he's the biggest fan. He can name you the rosters up and down, tell you their scores, tell you what they did wrong and right. And he loves it. He loves it. And the players love him. That's what I love about it.
I think that's amazing. I love that. I love that response. And, I can relate to that as well. We could all relate to this, our team growing up, basketball, and just the identity of Canada as a whole in GTA. I think that's amazing. Do you share the same passion and love for the game you had when you were a child as you do currently? Is it greater now? And if so, what are some reasons for that?
Look, it's just as strong as it is now. It's actually better now because I'm not on a team. It's even better because I get to enjoy with my children. Both of my sons play basketball. They play at a recreational level, semi-competitive level. And I think that's what's made it so fun for me, is that, I can do that with them. It's something that they can relate to. My family relates to it. I can say that, basketball has been more fulfilling for me now, I'm 42, than when I was 22 or when I was 12. It means more to me now. And I think that's kind of the coolest thing for me. I wouldn't consider myself, I wasn't an incredible player as a kid, but I was a good player. But just watching the evolution of when I was in high school, and watching what it's become, and knowing what it's going to become, has been the most fulfilling part of this whole journey.
I think that's amazing. And on behalf of our group, we'd like to thank you for joining us in our documentary on Uprising, Bankshot, and we appreciate your story and your journey and your uprising with CEPL, and we wish you nothing but the best. And we're behind you 100% when you continue your evolution of the playgrounds. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. I hope it goes well. Appreciate you guys.
That was amazing.
Thanks.
That was good.
Thanks.
Very passionate. It's well spoken. That was good.
Yeah, good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
that was
you.
cool.
I
Thank
love
you,
your
man.
responsibility.
Appreciate it, man. So you guys are good?